Awesome, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Um, so today we're gonna make some corned beef hash with some eggs, a little bit of a brunch breakfast in honor of St. Patty's Day coming up right around the corner. So as we have our leftover corned beef, we can turn that into corned beef hash for a nice, beautiful breakfast the next day. The first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna talk a little bit about corned beef. So corned beef is the brisket. Um, Typically, it's a brisket and it's brine, and brine means it's soaked in like a water salt solution. The reason that we do that is it helps permeate and it gets the flavor from the inside out, and it allows the moisture to retain as we keep cooking it. So it's a tough cut of meat. You can see a lot of types of beef will do a dry rub on the outside. That's not going to allow the flavor to get into the center. So that's why we brine it, and it helps soften up that protein. And then we're gonna typically the corned beef is going to be braised low and slow because it's such a tough cut of meat. But again, that has already been prepared for us. So today we're going to start with our corned beef hash. So first and foremost, the recipe that I like to use is just going to have corned beef, potatoes, onions, and parsley. Super simple and really tasty. That being said, the potatoes are already blanched ahead of time. And to blanch means I just par cooked it till it was al dente or just a little bit firm. Because potatoes being so dense, with the corned beef being cooked and the onions being cooked, we want it all to be cooked together. So if I were to throw them in raw, they would end up not being cooked by the time the corned beef and the onions are ready. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some onions here and I'm going to saute them and get those to translucent. All right. So translucent just means almost opaque so that you can see through it. We don't want any color on it. The color is going to come from the second part when I throw in the potatoes and the corned beef. So right now I just want to get those onions semi-cooked, same thing, so it's all cooked together. One of the most important parts about doing this, you'll see when it gets to the plate, is making sure that all the cuts are the same size. The reason that we do that, the reason that we focus so much on cuts, is because we want it all to cook again together. So we get the onions to that nice translucent point. I don't want a really big chunk that's going to be raw and then have a little chunk that's going to be burnt. But you can hear my onions going, beautiful. At this point, one of the chef's best friend is salt. I'm not going to add any salt to this because I'm thinking about the dish as a whole. So corned beef is already brine in a salt solution, salt water solution. So it's going to be really salty. So I don't want to add salt until the end because I don't want it to be over salted. Okay. So right now you guys can hear those onions sauteing. That's another important part of learning to work with food is that we're going to use every sense we have, from touch to taste to sight to sound to smell. I can smell that they're almost ready. So I'm going to keep moving them around. Oh, I wish you guys could smell this. It smells so good. All right, again, I'm not looking for much color on this. I'm just trying to get it partially cooked, and then we're going to do a sear on the corned beef and potatoes, which you talked about. So, like I said, everything here is cooked. So I'm not trying to cook it and make sure everything's done once the onions are ready. I just want to heat it all up and get a little bit of color on it, so everything is ready to go. All right. Got about 10 to 20 more seconds on those onions, and I'm going to bring them over here to the cutting board shortly so you can see what I mean by translucent. And then we're going to add the corned beef and the potatoes as well. All right, almost there. So after we do the corned beef and get it on the plate, I'm going to talk about eggs a little bit and the perfect open medium egg. I think it's very hard to do, but the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. And I'm going to show you how I make the perfect open medium egg, which is no runny whites, but still runny yolk. All right. I'm going to bring these onions over to the cutting board so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so right here, you can see translucent as opposed to the other onions here. You're almost able to see through it, and they're starting to become a little bit soft, and they smell like they're starting to sear. But that's what we're looking for with the translucent onions. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add the corned beef and then add the potatoes. Which again, so these are all, I cut them all the same size, as you can see. And then I par cooked them, because again, I don't want a big chunk that's gonna be undercooked or a little chunk that's gonna be overcooked and turned to mashed potatoes. Same with the corned beef, I just want a nice even sear on everything. So I'm gonna turn that back to heat. While I do that, I'm gonna put some more oil in the pan. The more oil that I have, the quicker this is gonna sear for us. Again, you can hear it sizzling. I have the onions in there. I'm going to take a spatula. I'm going to get it all nice and mixed up. All right. Perfect. While that's searing, like I said, I'm trying to get a layer of color so that when I flip it into the bowl, I have some of that texture, that color there. Okay. So I'm going to let that sit. I'm not going to move it around too much. And next, we're going to start on the over medium eggs. Most important part for the over medium eggs is going to be a non-stick pan. Okay, this is something that we don't want to use any metal in. It's going to keep the eggs from sticking, and it's probably your greatest tool in making eggs. So with this pan, I'm going to crack the eggs into it. I already have a little bit of oil here. Beautiful. And one important thing with eggs is we don't want to use high heat. The thing that I can control is the temperature. So if I cook it low and slow, it'll cook nice and evenly. We don't always have to have everything on high heat. And if you come back to the cutting board, I'm going to show you the eggs in the pan. Okay. So right here I have my eggs. And what you can see is you can see the yolk. And then you have this big pool of white. And then you have your loose whites around the outside. And it's a little difficult to see in the pan. But if you think of an egg in a pan, what I'm going to do to get the perfect over medium eggs is I'm going to pop this white that's holding on to the yolk so it can run all the way around the pan. And that will allow the whites to cook evenly before the yolk finishes cooking. Check out the pan. Nice, starting to get a good sear on that. Like I said, I'll bring that over here in just a sec so you guys can see it. So I have the eggs on medium low heat. And there are many different types of eggs, different types of ways to cook eggs. I said over medium is my favorite because I love that creamy yolk. As far as the range goes, think of it like steak, from rare to medium well. So first and foremost, we have our over easy, which is like rare. So that's going to be runny whites and runny yolk. Over medium is next, which is going to be no runny whites and runny yolk. And then you go into over well, where everything is cooked all the way through. One of the trickiest things about eggs is that we want it to be, we don't want any color on it. So that's why I tend to keep my heat low for the perfect egg. All right. Beautiful. Let that corned beef hash keep going. Like I said, I'm just looking for a little bit of a sear on it. Everything else should be already cooked. And then at the end, we're going to throw our fresh parsley in. We're going to do that last minute because I don't want the fresh parsley to wilt over heat right now. And I want that really fresh, herbaceous flavor to run through the whole dish. All right. One thing I'm going to talk about with the eggs is how to flip it. I know flipping eggs can be tricky, but the trick to it is having the what I call the choo-choo train motion, or like if you're doing a water balloon toss. So you're going to take the pan and lean it down, and you're going to flip when it sits at the bottom of the pan. And I'll show you that on the cutting board here very shortly. When you flip, you're going to come back with it. So you want to catch it softly so that the yolks don't break. Okay. So if we come over to the cutting board, so you can see the eggs right here. And the eggs right here, so I can't see the non-stick through the eggs. And as I swirl it, the whole thing is moving around. So that's how I know that my eggs are ready. And then for the flip, we're going to bring it down to this nook in the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to go ahead and go up and come back down with it so that I don't break anything. And return it back to heat. Okay. One of the beautiful things about eggs is I'm going to turn off the heat, even though they aren't finished cooking. That being said, the pan is still hot, so it's going to keep cooking it. We have something called carryover temperature, like we do with steak, where it goes up 5 degrees from when you pull it. So without heat, I know that these eggs are going to keep cooking. I'm going to keep flipping it, make sure it's loose, and flip it back and forth and find the pretty side. Beautiful. All right. So I have a little bit of color on the corned beef hash right now. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to bring it back over here and mix in the parsley. Nice and hot. Okay, so at this point you can see everything in the pan. I have a nice sear, a little bit of color in the pan. Let me go ahead and take some fresh chopped parsley. I prefer Italian flat leaf. It just has a little bit more of a citric flavor in it. A little bit of acidity. Okay. Again, this is a fresh herb, so if I were to cook this in the pan, it would end up cooking way too fast and wilting, almost like spinach in the pan. Use a little bit more parsley here. Beautiful. And then the last thing that I'm going to add to this dish, I'm going to add some cracked black pepper. Like I said, there's already a bunch of salt in the corned beef. This is the point where I would taste it and then figure out if I need to add some more salt. But I've already tasted it, so I know that I don't need to add any more salt. But I do need to add some cracked black pepper to it. Freshly ground, if possible. Again, I'm just going to bring that peppery taste all the way through. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So now we're going to move this over to a plate. Presentation is everything. When we eat, we first eat with our eyes. So if it doesn't look tasty, it's probably not going to be tasty, which isn't always true, but it's definitely a mental game to think about. So I want to make this dish as pretty as possible. All right. Have a nice mound of corned beef hash here. So you guys can see that. I think that looks nice and beautiful. It's going to be a good breakfast. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and put the eggs on. All right. So now that we have our leftover corned beef from St. Patty's Day, we were able to throw some potatoes, onions, parsley, a little bit of pepper in there, and some eggs. And throw a little bit of fresh parsley on top to make that color pop. And then lastly, I have some golden brown toast points. I'm gonna throw into the dish. And there you have it. There's a beautifully balanced breakfast. It's a way to use your leftover food from St. Patty's Day. And it's definitely filling, will help with the hangover.